Welcome back. I'm Neil Chase, author of Iron Dogs and writer-director of Spin the Wheel. And today, let's talk about genre cliches. Are you as tired as I am of seeing the same predictable patterns in your favorite genres? Whether it's a chosen one in fantasy, a final girl in horror, or a villain monologuing in action movies, cliches can grow old fast. But what if I told you that breaking these cliches in a clever way can create some of the most memorable stories? Today, we're diving into 5 genre cliches you should break, and how to do it the right way, with examples from sci-fi, horror, fantasy, and action. So grab your popcorn, let's get started. But how do cliches differ from tropes? A trope is a fundamental building block of storytelling, a recurring theme, character type, or plot device that helps define a genre. For example, the unlikely duo in buddy cop movies, or the reluctant hero in fantasy novels, are tropes that audiences recognize and expect in certain kinds of stories. Clichés, on the other hand, are lazy and overused storytelling devices that can make a story feel uninspired. While they might have started as powerful tropes, over time their impact has diminished as audiences have seen them repeated over and over again. So, a trope becomes a cliché when it's used too often without adding anything new or meaningful to the story, and what was once inventive and exciting becomes formulaic and stale. But breaking a cliché doesn't mean rejecting the trope itself. It means rethinking the trope and finding a new perspective or unexpected twist so as to surprise your audience and make it meaningful again. So here are what I consider 5 of the most overused clichés in genre fiction, and how you can break them in your own stories. We've all seen it. A prophecy, a hidden destiny, the gods, or fate itself, and one person who's chosen by some higher power to save the world. This fantasy and sci-fi cliché often relies on destiny and exceptionalism, giving the hero an almost untouchable quality. While iconic, it absolutely feels overused in a crowded genre landscape, and has the added downside of leaving other characters as mere sidekicks or obstacles. For example, in the movie Hercules, the chosen one cliché is applied in the most generic way possible, with Hercules fulfilling his prophecy without any real personal growth or emotional depth. The story leans so heavily on the savior narrative that it lacks any originality or stakes. We know from moment one that he'll win no matter what, and it's only a matter of when, and not if. So how to break it? Well, shift the focus from destiny to choice. Instead of a hero born with greatness, explore a character who earns their role through hard work, sacrifice, or sheer determination. Alternatively, create a chosen one who rejects their destiny or even fails spectacularly, forcing others to rise to the occasion. For example, in the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, Esser's role as the chosen one is neither glamorous nor preordained. Her power comes with devastating consequences, and her journey is driven by survival and love rather than destiny. This subversion adds moral complexity and emotional weight to the story of a character with inherent power, and puts the choice in her hands rather than fate's. Another overused trope to the point of cliché is the final girl. You know, the lone survivor who outsmarts or overpowers the killer, often embodying aspects of virginal purity or extraordinary resilience. While this cliché has given us memorable characters like Laurie Strode and Sidney Prescott, among so many others, it can make a story rather predictable when we know exactly who will survive. Take a look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. The final girl cliché is so poorly executed, and Jenny, the last survivor of a group of friends attacked by Leatherface and his family, survives less through her own ingenuity and action than thanks to random luck and the convenient help of strangers. In the end, her final girl status feels unearned, and the story relies on tired slasher elements without adding anything new or really interesting to her journey. But you can subvert expectations by changing who survives or how they survive. Perhaps the final girl doesn't defeat the killer, but escapes through cunning or an uneasy truce. Alternatively, let the survivor be flawed, complicit, or even morally ambiguous. The more gray you can inject into a black and white scenario like this, the more complex and interesting it becomes. not just for your characters, but for your audience as well. In The Witch, Thomasin's survival isn't about defeating evil, but embracing it. The film flips the cliche by showing her transformation into something darker, exploring themes of empowerment and defiance against social repression. This makes her overall arc into the last girl standing both surprising and thought-provoking. Next up, aliens arriving as hostile invaders is a staple of sci-fi. It's dramatic, action-packed, and often serves as a metaphor for real-world fears like war, disease, or colonization. But this trope quickly veers into cliché territory when the aliens are presented as a unified collective to the point of acting as a hive mind. It simplifies the threat, turning what should be autonomous beings into a monolithic enemy, often with the added trope that when the main alien or mothership is destroyed, all ground troops suddenly die or shut down. While this makes for an ultra-convenient resolution, it can feel lazy and rob the story of deeper tension. For an example, just look at the Avengers, where the alien Chitauri army is entirely dependent on their mothership. Once Iron Man destroys it, every alien in New York immediately collapses. While this might be visually satisfying to some, this resolution feels rushed and reduces the alien threat to mere cannon fodder, lacking any individuality or stakes. The best way to subvert this cliché is by giving the alien invaders their own autonomy, or making their collective nature more nuanced. Show that destroying the leader doesn't instantly resolve the conflict, but perhaps only lessen it temporarily. Or explore the individuality of the ground forces to add some true complexity and unpredictability. Look at Edge of Tomorrow, which flips the collective alien trope by presenting the mimics as a hive mind, yes, but with a clever twist. Killing the Omega alien won't instantly end the war if the Alphas, basically its field generals, are killed in the process. The Alphas have the power to reset time each time they're killed, and with the full knowledge of what happened in the previous timeline. This rules out simply bombing the Omega's position once they find out where it is. Instead, our heroes must work through a time loop mechanic to figure out how to disable the hive mind in a permanent way rather than achieve a temporary victory. This approach maintains the tension and complexity while avoiding an overly convenient resolution. Next, we come to a staple of fantasy and sci-fi: the dark, all-powerful villain plotting to dominate the world, or the galaxy, or the universe, or the multiverse. Well, you get the idea. While these characters can be memorable thanks to their power sets, or their design, or some other external features, their goals and methods can often feel one-dimensional. In The Dark Tower, the Man in Black is portrayed as a generic evil overlord with little depth or nuance. He's evil for the sake of evil, and everything he says or does is motivated by that one simple fact. With such a shallow depth of character, it makes him more of a caricature than a compelling antagonist. His motivation feels skin deep, and his presence lacks any real menace. The trick here is to add depth to your villain by giving them relatable motivations or exploring the consequences of their power. You don't need a deep dive into their backstories or make them overly sympathetic. They are evil after all. But giving them some real depth and relatability will do wonders for this type of character. Alternatively, shift the focus from the overlord to the people they've oppressed, or maybe even let the hero inadvertently become the villain instead of defeating the evil outright. In Watchmen, Ozymandias subverts the evil overlord cliché in a really clever way. While he orchestrates mass destruction on a global scale, his ultimate goal is to save humanity from itself. His calculated and morally ambiguous actions force both the other characters as well as the movie audience to question whether his extreme methods justify the ends he seeks. And finally, action heroes who dodge bullets, walk away from explosions, and win every fight can be thrilling, depending on the set pieces and stunt work involved. But in the end, they always feel unrealistic. Their invincibility instantly makes the stakes feel low, because we know they'll always survive, and they'll always win. A great example of this is the John Wick series. While the first John Wick film gives us a hero who gets hurt a lot, and to the point where we wonder if he'll live to see the end credits. The sequels, on the other hand, increasingly turn up his invincibility to the point where in the third and fourth films, he's shot, run over by cars, and thrown off of multiple buildings, only to quite literally walk away. Now, while I love these movies for their inventive action scenes and choreography, as well as Keanu Reeves in the title role because he's so goddamn likable, his character transformed from a very human and flawed protagonist to an indestructible cartoon character by the end. So how to break it? Well, that's simple. Make your hero vulnerable. Show them failing, getting hurt, making concessions, or questioning themselves or their own abilities. Let their humanity and resilience, rather than their invincibility, define their heroism. For me, it's hard to think of a better example than Logan to redefine the superhero action genre than by portraying Wolverine as physically and emotionally broken. His weaknesses, questionable morality, struggles with survivor's guilt and unwanted connections, and ultimately his own mortality make his final act of heroism deeply poignant and relatable, turning a once indestructible character into one of the most human. So you can see that tropes can be useful for meeting audience expectations and elevating genre fiction, whereas cliches will weigh your story down, especially when they're used without thought. It's easy to rely on what so many others have done before you, but in doing so you risk making your work predictable and boring. By breaking cliches like The Chosen One, The Final Girl, or The Invincible Hero, you can create stories that both surprise and resonate with audiences. The key is to understand why the cliche exists in the first place, and then to find a way to approach it from an angle no one's thought of before. But these are just my 2 cents. Give me yours. Let me know in the comments below what's the most overused genre cliche you can think of, and how would you break it? And if you're looking for a couple of genre stories that try to break cliches, then you'll love my horror novel Iron Dogs, and my thriller film Spin the Wheel, out now on Tubi. You can find the links for both below. And if you're looking for more unique storytelling tips to take your fiction to the next level, click that like button, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell to stay updated with the latest content. Until next time, stay creative.